Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel for another episode of the route learning series recorded within Train Simulator. In this episode I wanted to do something a little bit different, so we're going to be heading over to Switzerland for a journey along the mighty Gotthardbahn route, which is produced by Rivet Games for Train Simulator. The route in Train Simulator models the section between Erstfeld and Bellinzona through the heart of the Swiss Alps, and this video will cover a full run of this journey. During the journey, we'll be passing through the old Gotthard Tunnel, which is around 15 kilometres long, which is just under 10 miles, and was constructed between 1872 and 1882. The Gotthard Tunnel, of course, shouldn't be confused with the new 57-kilometre long Gotthard Base Tunnel, which significantly shortens this journey. The route in Train Simulator is modelled as it was before the Gotthard Base Tunnel existed. The scenario I'm using for this journey is one which comes with the route, called Gotthard IC Summer Southbound, and departs away from Erstfeld at 13:05, calling at Göschenen, Airolo, Faido and Biasca on our way to the final stop on the journey of Bellinzona. The total distance for this journey is around 108.7 kilometres, and the ruling speed limit for much of this route is around 80 kilometres per hour or 50 miles per hour, with some shorter sections with higher speed limits up to as high as 125 kilometres an hour, which is around 78 miles per hour. One thing to note is that as we travel along this journey, the place names change, reflecting travelling from the German-speaking part of Switzerland to the Italian-speaking part. Our train on this journey is in push-pull formation, with the locomotive on the rear and a DVT, cab car or Stauwagen, depending whether you're British, American or German, on the front. The locomotive on this train is an SBB Re460 electric locomotive, which is also known as the Lok 2000. Designed by Pininfarina, they were built by SLM in Winterthur and ABB in Zurich between 1991 and 1996, with a total of 121 of these locomotives produced, of which 119 were constructed for the Swiss Federal Railways, or SBB. The length of each locomotive is 18.5 metres, and they have a weight of 84 tonnes. Running on the 15 kilovolts, 16 and 2/3 Hz AC electrification system, the locomotives have a maximum power output of a whopping 6,100 kilowatts or 6.1 megawatts, which is around 8,180 horsepower. They have a maximum tractive effort of 300 kilonewtons, which is around 67,440 pounds of force, with a maximum speed of 200 kilometers per hour, which is around 125 miles per hour. Okay, so I've just jumped into the cab of the Stauwagen, which I think would be the correct terminology. I'm guessing it would be in Switzerland, but please do correct me if I'm wrong. So just to explain, a DVT, or driving van trailer, cab car or Stauwagen, is just an unpowered driving coach which has a driving cab in it to control the locomotive at the opposite end of the train that's pushing the train. So I'm just going to quickly set up ready for departure, but there's really very little to do here. I've already set up the headlights as I realised that this wouldn't be the starting point for this train, and it would be starting from a previous location on the route. So I'm just going to put the reversing handle into the forward position. I'd already turned the headlights on, and now there's pretty much nothing else to do other than press Shift and numpad Enter, which just turns on the driver safety device or alerter. So I just wanted to quickly talk about some of the controls here. So on the left-hand side of the cab, we have the brake handle, which is a very smoothly controlled brake, so you've got very precise control of the braking on this train. And if we look up here now, you can see the two gauges in the middle of the screen, which are the brake gauges. So the top gauge is showing you sort of how hard the brakes are applied in terms of, I think it's the brake cylinder, or brake pipe pressure reduction, should I say. So you can see it's normally charged to 5 bar, and as we apply the brakes, then that number falls, and the lower that number is reading, then the harder the brakes are applied. And if you look at the gauge below that, you can see there's a little yellow bug on the outside of the gauge. Now, that's the one that I'm generally using to decide how hard the brakes are applied. I believe that one is the brake cylinder pressure gauge, and so as you apply the brakes there, In fact, it's just stopped going up for a moment. There we are, it's now increasing again. 0 is fully released, and the higher that number is pointing, then the harder the brakes are applied. Just to the right of that, we've got the speedometer measured in kilometers per hour, and you can control the speed set here with the Y and the C keys. So you can see the little bug on the outside of the speedometer. So that's showing you that we're currently set to 40 kilometers per hour, and it's an exceptionally good cruise control on this train. It really does hold the speed, whether you're going uphill, downhill, whatever. It just holds the speed about 2 to 3 kilometers per hour below the speed limit, just to ensure that you don't end up breaking the speed limit. I've currently set it to 40 kilometers per hour because that's the speed limit that's going to be imposed on the signal which is coming up just ahead of us. Something else I wanted to talk about in the cab here is the display that's currently reading 4/8 in front of us just to the right of the clock. So that is the signal speed display, and I do talk a little bit about how the signals work on this route as we're driving through the journey. But for now, just to say, basically, if you reach a cautionary signal and you press Q to reset the signal alarm, this display won't be reading the 4/8 at that point, but it will give you a number, and that's the target speed that you need to reduce to by the time that you've reached the next signal. So it's often like 60 or 40 or something like that. So it just means you've passed this signal, you reset the alarm, the display now says, say, 60 for example. Just slow down to 60 kilometers per hour by the time that you've reached the next signal. And on the right hand side here, we've got the throttle control, which is a very smoothly controlled throttle. So as you push it away from you, you're applying power to the train, and then as you move it to the neutral position, you can hear a click, which is really the only way I can tell when I've cut the throttle off and put it into idle. It's also a combined traction and brake controller in that you do have independent control of the dynamic braking on this train, which is a frictionless braking system. So if you press D to move it beyond the neutral position, you get another click, and then we're now applying the dynamic braking, but that's not controlling the air brakes at all, and you cannot stop a train with dynamic braking alone because it requires the train to be moving for it to work. Now, when you use the brake handle on this train normally, it actually blends the dynamic and air braking together, though the dynamic braking cuts out as you get to lower speeds and you're relying on the air brakes, which I have to say, on this train do feel a little bit on the spongy side, and it is quite difficult to stop without a very hard brake application. Of course, we do have a horn in this train, so I'm just going to press spacebar now just to demonstrate the horn. And now that we've done that, we've had a look at the cab, we are set up ready for departure, so let's just take another quick look outside the train and then depart out on our journey towards Bellinzona. Departing away from Erstfeld, the speed limit was 60 km per hour, though the speed limit imposed by the signal at the end of the platform is 40 km per hour, with around 28.6 kilometers to go to our first stop, which is Göschenen. And just as we've crossed over to the left-hand track here, the speed limit is going up to 60 km per hour. So I'm just going to wait a few gantries. We're going to pass the buffer stops on the left-hand side, and about 2 gantries beyond that, I'll then start bringing our speed up towards 60 km per hour. Just change the speed set to 60 now, and now I'm going to increase the throttle. So we accelerate up to that really quite rapidly on this train. I do find the acceleration rate is pretty good, especially for a loco pushing a whole load of coaches on some very steep uphill gradients along this first section of the route. And And the beeping of that signal indicates that all signal speed restrictions are now rescinded, so we can now accelerate up to the line speed of 80 kilometers per hour, which is around 50 miles per hour, and that's pretty much the ruling line speed for the majority of this route, which I found quite surprising. It's a rather fast speed limit for a mountainous route, and really it helps me to enjoy driving this route more, and it really feels like you're doing a good long distance intercity journey when you're driving along here. Now coming up on Amsteg-Zillenen with around 24 kilometers to go. Now passing through the first of a series of tunnels. At the signal after we've passed through the third tunnel, we've then got around 20 kilometers to go. just passed through the third tunnel now. As I said, at the next signal we've got around 20 kilometres to go. At the following signal, 19 kilometres to go. And then I think it's the signal after that one we're going to get a warning for us to slow down, as we're going to need to cross onto the right-hand track due to some engineering work. Still haven't seen this warning signal for the upcoming 60 limit yet, so we're just continuing as normal for now. Just to explain a bit about the signals, so at certain signals, like this one, you can see we've got 2 green dots there, that's absolutely fine, but with speed restricted signals you'll have a yellow dot in the top left corner, and if you've got that with 1 green dot on the signal, that means you need to slow to 40 kilometers per hour by the next signal. If you've got a yellow dot in the top left corner with 2 green dots, that means you need to slow down to 60 kilometers per hour by the next signal. And if you've got a yellow dot in the bottom right corner with 2 green dots, that means you need to slow to 90 kilometers per hour by the next signal. And I can see the warning signal just coming up. As you can see, we've got 1 yellow dot in the top left, followed by 2 green dots, indicating slow down to 60 kilometers per hour by the next signal. So as you pass it, press Q to acknowledge it. And now I'm just going to cut the power back as we're on an uphill gradient. I'm just going to allow the train to coast down towards 60 kilometers per hour. We've just passed Gurtnellen there with just over 16 kilometers to go, and I'm nicely coasted down to 60 kilometers per hour and changed the speed set temporarily. And now we're crossing over to the right hand track, and I need to look out for the workmen on the track ahead and sound the horn when I see them. We've now got the beeping at the signal, indicating that the signal speed restriction has been rescinded, so once again we can accelerate up towards the line speed of 80 kilometers per hour. Now now going through the first of two tunnels here, a shorter tunnel and then a longer tunnel, and then the signal after the longer tunnel. We're going to have to slow down once again as we're going to be crossing back over onto the left-hand track. Certainly is a long tunnel here, and the reason why I've got the top headlight turned on is purely so you can see the overhead catenary in the tunnels. Otherwise you see nothing and you really don't know where you are. So we just had another warning there for an upcoming 60 speed limit at the next signal. I'm now just going to cut the power back and allow the train to coast. And we should nicely coast down towards 60 kilometers per hour on this uphill gradient here. And then I'll quickly change the speed set back to 60 just to ensure we don't break that speed. The speed set is now 60, and I've just increased the throttle now so we don't lose any more speed. We're just coming up on the next signal, and then we're going to cross over to the left-hand track, and then in a short time we should be able to accelerate back up towards the ruling line speed once again. We're now coming up on Pfaffensprung with just under 12 kilometers to go. And now we've got the two beeps there at the signal. We can now accelerate back up towards 80 kilometers per hour once again. We're about to start the first of two sort of switchback loops here, and we're actually going to be climbing here, doing a 180-degree turn to come back on ourselves, still climbing, and then doing another 180-degree turn to turn back on ourselves once again. So we're just turning a sharp left turn now before we're going to enter a long, sharp right turn. In fact, we're going to be turning a bit over 180 degrees. The long sharp right curve has started as we've entered this tunnel here, and we're going to be turning until I think beyond the tunnel exit, if I remember correctly. now passing Wassen with around 8 kilometers to go. Going to go through a shorter tunnel, and then we're going straight into a longer tunnel in a moment. And again, we're going to be on a sharp curve, this time a sharp left curve, as we climb to turn back on ourselves once again. Now I believe we've just started the left turn, which is going to see us turn once again over 180 degrees. We're going to go through this tunnel here on the way around the turn. At the signal in the tunnel, so that not this tunnel, but one immediately after it, sorry, a longer tunnel immediately after it. And at the signal in the tunnel, we've then got around 6 kilometers to go. Just past the 6 kilometer mark now. And at the next signal, we've then got around 4.4 kilometers to go. Now about to enter a longer tunnel, and in this longer tunnel, the first signal in the tunnel is around 3.6 kilometers from our destination, and at the tunnel exit we've got around 2.1 kilometers to go. So just past the 3.6 kilometer mark now, and I'm looking out for the tunnel exit. After the tunnel exit, we're going to pass an avalanche shelter, and then shortly after that we'll start looking at our braking point. So now reaching the tunnel exit with around 2.1 kilometers to go. We're then going to pass an avalanche shelter, as I said, and then the next signal after that, we've got around 1 kilometer to go. This is what I believe is an avalanche shelter now. Well, I'm not 100% certain. So I'm looking out for the next signal. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to idle the power at the right-hand curve immediately after that signal, and the train will start to coast to lose speed as we're still on a steep upward gradient, though the gradient will be levelling out just before we reach our stop at Göschenen. So just reaching that signal now, and I'm going to idle the power just as we enter this next right-hand curve. Now got some brakes on as well, just to ensure that we are slowing down quick enough. I find the brakes are quite effective when we're at a higher speed due to the dynamic braking that's used, but of course dynamic braking becomes completely ineffective at lower speeds. So when the air braking system kicks in and we're only using air braking on this train, I find the brakes are much less effective than when you're braking at a higher speed. It's difficult to work out exact stopping points on this route, but I'm aiming to stop at the overhead gantry after the final platform number marker on the right-hand side. So you can now see the final platform number marker just coming up. So on platform 3, section D, and I want to stop at the overhead gantry just beyond that, and that should be roughly the correct stopping point. So if I just brake, and hopefully we should now be stopping in just about the right place. As you can see, we're in 50% braking, but we're certainly not slowing down very quickly. We should now be stopped in just about the right place. Departing away from Göschenen, the starting speed limit here is 80 km per hour, with around 15.8 km to go to the next stop, which is Airolo. And here we're crossing from the German-speaking part of Switzerland to the Italian-speaking part of Switzerland. In a moment, as we've entered this tunnel, the speed limit's now going up to 120 km per hour, so I'm just waiting until I've counted 4 overhead gantries in the tunnel, and then I'm sure we can accelerate up towards that. So we're actually now in the 15-kilometre long Gotthard Tunnel, the original Gotthard Tunnel. So we're going to be in a tunnel almost all of the way to the next stop from this point. Gotthard Tunnel, work begun on this tunnel on September the 13th, 1872, and the tunnel was opened on June the 1st, 1882. And of course, this is not to be confused with the Gotthard Base Tunnel. So at the signal we just passed, we had 14.2 kilometres to go. Signal just past that, we had 13.3 kilometres to go, and the only way to know where you are in this tunnel is literally to count signals, otherwise you really have no idea of your bearings. this signal we now have 12.3 kilometres to go, and you may have noticed that one had a yellow light for the opposite track, and that's actually very helpful to differentiate signals. So you'll notice that the next one has a red light for the opposite track. That's because the one with the yellow light is a distance signal which can only display a green proceed aspect or a yellow cautionary aspect, while the next signal is a home signal, which in this case can only display a green proceed aspect or a red stop aspect. So we're actually differentiating between the distance and the home signals, looking at the signal aspect for the opposite track. So at this signal here we've got 11.3 kilometres to go. There's a bit of a longer gap between signals here, and at this signal we've got 9.4 kilometres to go. Even travelling through this tunnel at almost 75 miles per hour, I have to say, it certainly does feel long and never-ending. The signal we just passed, I believe we had 8 kilometres to go. Coming signal, we've got 6.7 kilometres to go. Signal we just passed, we had 5.4 kilometres to go, and then the following signal will have 4 kilometres to go, and at that point I'm just going to idle the power and allow the train to coast, as we're going to be starting on a downgrade as we head towards the exit of the tunnel. And there's also a speed change, so we do need to reduce our speed by the time that we've reached the tunnel exit. So just shut off the power at this point to allow the train to coast. At this signal we've got around 3 kilometres to go. the signal. We've got 2 kilometers to go and 1 kilometer to go to the upcoming 80 kilometer per hour speed limit. There should be a warning post that's going to be on the wall of the tunnel in a moment, so I'm just looking out for that very carefully to make sure that we see it, and then I'll apply the brakes at that point. So we've just passed the warning post there now. I've now got the brakes on to slow us down in time for that 80 speed limit. Oh, we just entered the 80 zone, about 83 I think it was, so I was going slightly fast. I didn't quite brake hard enough, and of course we are still on a downhill gradient, so I released the brakes a bit early as well, and I forgot about that. We are now coming into our stop, of course, so I've just got the brakes on to slow us down in time for Airolo station. Coming in pretty quick actually, so I put the brakes on quite hard to ensure that we do slow down in time. Our speed has now come off quite nicely. So yeah, I should have just braked a little bit harder. It was really difficult to judge in that tunnel exactly how far you are from any upcoming speed changes. So I want to stop here just by the point on the left hand side. So just coming up onto that point now, and just pull up slightly further. I'm just reducing the braking now to come to a smoother stop. And we should now be stopped in just about the right place. Departing away from Airolo, the speed limit here is 80 kilometers per hour, and I've changed the speed set back to 80 now to ensure that we don't break that speed limit. We're on a steep downhill gradient straight after the station, which is certainly helping with our acceleration. And we've got around 19.6 kilometers to go to the next stop, which is Faido. We've nicely got up to 80 kilometers per hour now, and really you don't need much power at this point, as the train is just going to be using the brakes to control our speed for most of the journey from here on out. So after having driven through this route, I mean, I've got most of the Swiss routes by Rivet Games now. Personally, this is my favourite of their routes because of the type of journey being a longer distance intercity journey rather than these really short, winding mountainous routes. It's a much longer route, and I really appreciate that, and the fact that we're driving a full intercity train. But just apart from that, I just really like the quality and the feel of this route. And so yeah, it's fast become my favourite of the Swiss routes in Train Simulator, though I have just bought some more as of last night with the Midweek Madness sale, so we'll have a look at some of them and see if I change my opinion and like any of them more than this one. We're now passing Ambri Piotta with around 13 kilometres to go. Racing the cars along the road to the side of us there. It looks like we are going to win that race a little bit. We will soon be coming up on a place called Rodi Fieso, which is the next place that I'm looking out for. Once we reach there, we've got around 8.2 kilometres to go. Just past Rodi Fieso, and at this point we've got around 8 kilometres to go, so now I'm looking out for some tunnels as the next landmark, and we're going to be starting another looped descent turn very shortly. So we have this first initial tunnel, then there's going to be a shorter tunnel followed by a long tunnel, and once we're in the long tunnel we're then going to be doing, I think, something like a 360-degree turn to descend, and we're actually going to come out of that tunnel pretty close to where we entered it. So now, we're now in that longer tunnel, and we're on a long sweeping left turn descent. As I said, we'll come out pretty close to where we started, below the track that we were on before. As we reach the exit to this tunnel, we've got 5.1 kilometers to go. As we pass through this shorter tunnel with a signal in it, we've got 3.8 kilometers to go, and at the right curve at the exit to this tunnel, we're on the start of yet another looped descent turn, where we're going to do another, I think it's over 360-degree turn to descend again further down the valley. We're now going to enter another longer tunnel at the next signal. We've got 2.8 kilometers to go. At the exit to this tunnel, we've now got 1.8 kilometers to go, with 1.6 kilometers to go at the next signal, and we are still on a steep downward gradient. We're then going to pass through another tunnel, and I'm going to apply the brakes for our stop at the signal just after the tunnel exit. So I've just come through that tunnel now. I'm now just looking for the tunnel exit. And, sorry, not the tunnel exit, the signal after the tunnel exit, I meant. Sorry, I was distracted for a moment there. And now I've got the brakes on to start slowing us down for our stop. Seems we're actually struggling to get that speed off, so I've increased the braking quite significantly now to hopefully be able to stop in time here. Here at Faido, I want to stop at the signal just before the end of the platform. Just coming towards the end of the platform now, and I'm just trying to adjust the braking. It's very difficult to get the exact brake force with this, I'm finding, but we're now getting nice and close to that signal, and now with some gentle braking we should be able to stop in just about the right place. Departing away from Faido, the speed limit here is 80 km per hour, with just under 26 km to go to our next stop, which is Biasca. And whilst the grade did level out as we entered the platform here at Faido, we're quickly going back to a downhill grade, a very steep downgrade, so we should be able to accelerate up to line speed very quickly along here now. Now passing Göschenen. passing Lavorgo with around 19.5 kilometers to go. So we're now coming up on another tunnel, on the left turn at the exit of the tunnel. We're then starting on another long spiral descent. Now we're turning a little bit over 360 degrees to end up a bit lower than where we started. So we've now entered a much longer tunnel. When we reach the exit of this tunnel, we've got around 15.3 kilometers to go. Of course, the distances I'm giving here are track distance. In Train Sim World, for some reason, it gives you the straight line as the crow flies distance, which is a little bit annoying for routes like this because you can't judge the distance properly and know how far you've got to travel. But certainly, yes, as the crow flies, the distances on this route are a lot shorter, I am very sure, than the distances that I'm quoting because of all these spirals that we're doing to descend down the mountain and down the valley. So we just reached the tunnel exit with around 15.3 kilometers to go. We're now going to pass through a short tunnel. There's then going to be a right curve, and then once we enter the next left-hand curve, we're going to be once again on another spiral descent, turning once again more than 360 degrees. So there's certainly a lot of twisting and turning and descending along this section of the route. So the next spiral descent has begun. We're going to go through another long tunnel now. I notice they do love doing these descents right through the tunnels, through the mountains. So once we reach the exit to this tunnel, we've got around 12.8 kilometers to go. So just reached the tunnel exit with 12.8 kilometres to go. And the next landmark I'm looking out for is what appears to be an old closed station. See a very visible gradient change here, so the gradient is now shallowing out and we're not on such a steep descent anymore. I have given us a little bit of throttle now just to ensure that the train has the power, if it needs it, to maintain the speed. So it looks like we are very quickly descending once again. I mean, it doesn't really matter if you've got the throttle on or not too much on this descent, just because the cruise control is controlling our descent. We just passed the sites of what appears to be an old closed station. If I can find any information about it, then I'll caption it in the comments. And at that point, we've got around 10.3 kilometres to go. We've got some yard tracks now joining us on the right hand side, and in a moment we're going to have the first speed change since the Gotthard Tunnel, and the speed limit's going to be increasing to 95 kilometers per hour, which is just short of 60 miles per hour. So we've just come up on the 95 speed post now. Just going to wait until we've reached the end of this right hand curve, and now we can accelerate up towards 95. We're now coming up on Bodio station with around 6.8 kilometers to go. speed limit's now further increasing to 105 kilometers per hour, which is around 65 miles per hour. I'm just going to accelerate just as we pass that signal there. So I've now increased the speed set so we can accelerate up towards 105. And there's now a further increase in the speed limit to 125 kilometers per hour, which is about 77, 78 miles an hour. So I'm just going to accelerate up towards that now. But we've got around 1.8 kilometers to go to an upcoming 95 limit. So now we're doing 125 kilometers per hour. I've shut off the power to allow the train to coast. At this next signal coming up, we've got 0.8 kilometers to go. And so I'm going to start braking now for the upcoming 95 speed limit. And we've just passed the warning for it there. I want to make sure that I'm actually braking hard enough, unlike in the Gotthard tunnel there earlier. So hopefully the brakes should be on hard enough now. So we're now down to 95 kilometers per hour, and I'm just going to allow the train to coast at this point, as there is soon a further reduction in the speed limit down to 80 kilometers per hour. So we've just passed the 95 post there now. I'm going to allow the train to continue to coast. I've got the brakes on now to ensure that we slow down to 80 in time, and then I just realised actually I was braking slightly too early, as we've just passed the 80 warning there now, but not to worry too much. And now let's just pull the speed set back to 80 kilometers per hour. I just wanted to ensure that we were down to that speed limit in time. The upcoming signal, we've got around 1 kilometre to go to our stop. So I've now got the brakes on to slow us down in time for Biasca station. And at Biasca I want to stop at the end of the platform. There's actually a slightly staggered platform, so I want to stop at the end of the platform for the track to the right hand side. Speed off quite nicely there. I'm just reducing the braking for a moment, as I think we might be slowing down a little bit too quick. So the platform to our right ends before the platform that we're on, and this is what I mean by saying I want to stop around the area of the end of the platform on the opposite track. I can see that end coming up in a moment, so hopefully I'm bringing our speed off quite nicely to stop in about the right place. I think we are here. Just reducing the braking momentarily, as I felt we might be stopping a bit too early. And if we stop around here, we should now be stopped in just about the right place. Departing away from Biasca, the speed limit is 80 kilometers per hour with around 19 kilometers to go to our next and final stop on this journey, which is Bellinzona. The speed limit is now further increasing to 120 kilometers per hour, or 75 miles per hour, and we can accelerate up towards that just as we reach the next signal. So from here on out, the grades are a lot shallower and the curves are a lot gentler, so we can travel at some higher speeds along here. So just passed through a tunnel there, and then as we reach the next tunnel, which is a very short tunnel, we've got around 16.5 kilometers to go. We'll shortly be coming up on a zona Cresciano with around 13 kilometers to go. The speed limit's now going up further to 125 kilometers per hour with 11.8 kilometers to go. This next signal, we've got 2.5 kilometers to go to an upcoming 120 kilometer per hour speed limit and 11.2 kilometers to go. And this upcoming signal, we've got 1 kilometre to go to that upcoming 120 limit, which as you can see is Going to make very little difference to our current speed, but I do want to ensure that we're down to that speed in time. So the speed limit drops to 120 kilometers per hour just before the next signal. We just passed that 120 warning now, so I'm just going to drop the speed set by 5 kilometers per hour and just bring our speed down nicely. The speed limit's now dropped to 120, and at this next signal we've got 8.5 kilometers to go. We're now passing Claro with 6.3 kilometers to go. Sorry, correction, not 6.3, 7.5 kilometers to go. Sorry, I was reading my notes slightly wrong there. The landmark at 6.3 kilometers is actually the power lines that are currently on the right-hand side of the track are going to cross over us. At that point, we've got 6.3 kilometers to go to Bellinzona. Power lines have now crossed over us. The next signal is 5.5 kilometers to go, and around 2 kilometers to go to a 90 kilometer per hour speed limit. At the next signal we've got just under a kilometre to go to that 90 limit, and I'm also looking out now for the speed warning just beyond that signal, as that's where I'll be braking to make sure that we slow down in time. Now we're approaching that signal. I've just cut the power back to idle. We've got the 90 warning immediately after the signal there, so I've now applied the brakes to bring our speed down. We're now passing Castione Arbedo station, and the speed limit drops to 90 just after we've passed through the station. I've just dropped the speed set now to ensure that we don't end up breaking the speed limit. So we've just reached that 90 speed zone now. And then shortly the limit will be going back up to 100 kilometers per hour. At that point we've got 2.4 kilometers to go. Speed limit's just increased back up to 100 kilometers per hour, so I'm just going to accelerate as we reach the second of these crossover points here. Passing a signal box coming up in a moment with 1.7 kilometers to go, and I'm looking out for the signals now, as we are going to have a cautionary signal as we approach Bellinzona. So I've now got the power in idle, and I can see that cautionary signal coming up, which means that the next signal is displaying a red aspect, so I'm going to start braking for both the signal and the stop just as we pass the cautionary signal there. Our speed's coming off quite nicely. Here at Bellinzona, I really want to stop at the end of the platform roof. Might have slowed down a little bit on the early side there. Now I've brought our speed off quite nicely, and unlike at the last stop, I hope not to stop too early. I'm sure you read the caption there, but unfortunately at the previous stop I thought we'd reached the end of the platform from what I'd written on my notes, but actually it was a bit further up. So I did correct it by driving further up and then filming the external shots of the train from there. But yeah, we should be able to stop in the right place here, so we're just coming to the end of the roof now, just on the left-hand side there. Just release the brakes momentarily, now reapply, and we should now be stopping in just about the right place. And so here we are, arrival at Bellinzona. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. It's certainly the longest video I've done in a country outside the UK in a long time. And if you'd like to see more longer videos in other countries, then please do let me know in the comments, as I know that British videos are generally the most popular videos on my channel. So yeah, thank you very much for watching this video. If you did like it, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And also, for the latest channel updates, you can find me on Facebook with a link to my Facebook page in the video description. And also, if you'd like to support this channel on Patreon to allow me to purchase more DLC and produce a wider range of videos, then please visit my Patreon page with the link to that also in the video description. Once again, thank you for watching.